You haven't heard from them in months. No texts, no calls. Their social media went dark without warning. They just vanished. And somewhere, in a bedroom with closed curtains and stale air, they're still alive, still thinking, still feeling everything. But they can't come back yet. This isn't about ghosting a relationship or taking a quick break from Instagram. This is about something deeper, a phenomenon where people withdraw from everyone and everything for months, sometimes years, where existence itself becomes too heavy to carry in public. There's a moment that separates taking a mental health day from something clinical. Researchers have identified it. 6 months. That's the threshold where social withdrawal stops being self-care and becomes something else entirely. In Japan, they named it first, hikikomori. The term describes people who isolate themselves at home for 6 months or longer, avoiding school, work, and all social participation. But here's what makes this haunting. It's not just Japan anymore. Research from 2023 found hikikomori cases in France, Italy, Spain, Brazil, South Korea, India, and the United States. The rates vary wildly, from less than 1% in Japan to over 20% in Singapore. It's now recognized in the DSM-5-TR, the Bible of psychiatric diagnosis, as a global mental health issue. But why 6 months? Why is that the line? Because that's when the brain chemistry shifts. That's when withdrawal stops being a response to stress and becomes the new baseline. Studies tracking people in prolonged isolation found something disturbing. After 6 months, the thought of rejoining society doesn't bring relief anymore. It brings terror. Before someone disappears for months, something inside them collapses. Not loudly, not dramatically, silently. Research into hikikomori reveals 3 psychological dominoes that fall in sequence. First, the identity fracture. Here's where it gets painful. Many people who withdraw share a common pattern. They built their entire identity around other people's expectations. Their parents wanted them to be a doctor. Society told them success looks a certain way. They absorbed these scripts in childhood and ran with them. But eventually, reality crashes into expectation. They're not getting the grades. They didn't get the job. They can't be who everyone needs them to be. And here's the devastating part. They never asked themselves what they wanted in the first place. Studies on adolescent withdrawal found that when parental expectations are extremely high, especially when tied to educational achievement, children develop what researchers call a shame-bound identity. They don't just feel like they failed at something, they feel like they are failure. Shame isn't guilt. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am wrong. Research consistently links shame to social withdrawal, depression, anxiety, and what psychologists call psychological detachment. When shame becomes part of your identity, every interaction with another person feels like they can see your defectiveness. Walking outside feels like being naked in public. Answering a text feels like confessing to a crime. The loneliness research is clear. The more isolated you become, the more distorted your perception grows. You start to believe everyone judges you the way you judge yourself. Third, the body keeps score. Recent biological research discovered something fascinating. Scientists found measurable blood biomarkers in people experiencing prolonged withdrawal, changes in uric acid levels in men and HDL cholesterol in women. These markers are associated with avoidant personality traits. Your body is literally changing to match your psychology. The withdrawal isn't just mental anymore, it's biological, chemical, encoded into your nervous system.
Let me paint you a picture of what the inner world looks like when someone has been withdrawn for months. The time collapse. Days blur together. There's no distinction between Tuesday and Saturday. Morning and night lose meaning. One study of Japanese hikikomori found that many completely flip their sleep schedules, awake all night, asleep all day, because nighttime feels safer. The world is asleep. No one expects anything from you at 3 a.m. Time stops being linear and becomes this suffocating loop. Wake up, stare at screens, feel guilty, promise tomorrow will be different, fall asleep, repeat. The internet paradox. Here's what's misunderstood. Most people in prolonged withdrawal aren't completely disconnected. They're online, sometimes more than ever. They're in forums, chat rooms, gaming communities. Research shows many maintain what researchers call virtual relationships while completely avoiding face-to-face contact. Why? Because online, you control the narrative. You can edit yourself before you respond. You can disappear mid-conversation without seeing disappointment in someone's eyes. You can be whoever you want without your body betraying you. But it's a trap. The virtual connection just makes the real-world isolation more bearable, which means it extends it. The grief you can't explain. Here's what people don't understand. Most people who withdraw don't want to be isolated. Research found that contrary to popular belief, these aren't people who hate socializing. Many of them desperately miss their old lives. But there's this invisible wall. Every day they think, today I'll message someone, today I'll go outside. And then the anxiety comes, a physical sensation like drowning on dry land. The thought of explaining the gap, of facing questions, of being seen after all this time becomes unbearable. So they don't, and the gap gets wider, and the return gets harder. Studies on prolonged social withdrawal found a heartbreaking pattern. The longer someone is isolated, the more they catastrophize re-entry. They imagine scenarios where everyone hates them, where they've been forgotten, where coming back would cause more damage than staying gone. Research has identified different types of social withdrawal, and understanding this matters because it changes what's actually happening psychologically. The shy ones. These are people who desperately want connection, but their anxiety makes it feel impossible. They're reaching for the doorknob every day, but can't quite turn it. Their isolation is torture. Studies found these individuals show the highest rates of depression and suicidal ideation. The avoiders. These people are actively protecting themselves. Often they've experienced trauma, bullying, or repeated rejection. Their brain has learned that people equal pain. Isolation feels like safety. Research shows they experience less daily distress than the shy group, but their long-term outcomes are worse because they're not even trying to change. The unsocial. This is the group people misunderstand most. They genuinely prefer solitude. They're not afraid of people. They just don't need them the way most humans do. For them, isolation isn't a crisis, it's a preference. The question researchers are grappling with, when does preference become pathology? The modern world is complicating this. Remote work, online education, food delivery. You can survive indefinitely without face-to-face contact now. So where's the line?
Why don't they just come back? Because the psychology of re-entry is more terrifying than the isolation itself. Research on intervention programs for prolonged withdrawal found a pattern. The shame of being gone for months becomes heavier than the original shame that caused the withdrawal. It's compounded shame. How do you explain where you've been? How do you face the people who texted you 3 months ago? How do you walk into a social situation when you haven't been in one for half a year? One clinical study found that many people in prolonged isolation develop catastrophic thinking patterns. They believe everyone has moved on without them. People are angry or will ask too many questions. They've been replaced in their social circles. The gap is too large to bridge. And sometimes they're not entirely wrong. Some friends do move on. Some family members are angry. But the reality is almost always less catastrophic than the imagined scenario. Here's what research shows works for re-entry. Gradual exposure, not diving back in, but small steps, one text, one call, one person at a time. Honest communication, not detailed explanations, but simple truth. I went through something and needed time. I'm working on it. Professional intervention. Therapy, specifically approaches like cognitive behavioral therapy and narrative therapy, have shown effectiveness in helping people process the shame and rebuild social skills. But here's the crucial finding. Family involvement matters enormously. Studies found that when family members receive education on how to support someone in withdrawal, without judgment, without pressure, with patience, outcomes improve dramatically.
If you're watching this because someone in your life has disappeared, understand this. Their absence isn't about you. It's not rejection. It's not a statement. It's survival. They're in a psychological cage where every exit feels like it leads to more pain. And the most helpful thing you can do is leave the door open. Send the occasional message with no pressure to respond. Let them know the invitation still exists, that you're not angry, that the gap isn't too wide. If you're watching this because you're the one who disappeared, I want you to hear something. The gap isn't as wide as it feels. The catastrophe you're imagining isn't waiting for you. Most people are kinder than your anxiety is telling you they'll be. The research is clear on one thing. Every day of continued isolation makes return slightly harder, but it's never impossible. Not at 6 months, not at a year, not at 5 years. You're not broken beyond repair. You're a person who got stuck in a psychological pattern that made sense in the moment, and patterns can change. The inner world of people who disappear for months is marked by shame, fear, and a desperate hope that someday, somehow, they'll find the strength to open the door. For some of you, today might be that day. The smallest step counts. You're not as alone as you think you are.